But anyway, just a thought. I think we've had a lot of nice things this morning. We had worship, we had great testimonies. That by itself is a lot of food. Great stuff to think. But this morning I want to talk about the joy of Jesus. The joy of Jesus. And what I want to emphasize and focus on this morning is how important it is to just experience the joy of God in your life. You know, it never says, the Bible never says the joy of money. It never says the joy of health. It never says the joy of wealth. It never says the joy of education. It says the joy of the Lord will be your strength. Now, many people say, I'm not happy. It's okay if you're not happy. You don't need to be happy. Happiness is really not part of the Bible. It's not a very spiritual word either. But joy is a very spiritual word. Sometimes people think happiness and joy are one and the same thing. It's not. Happiness is external. Joy is internal. Happiness depends on what happens to you and changes your mood. Joy doesn't have to determine what happens or doesn't happen because it's internal. Happiness necessarily doesn't come from God, but joy comes from God. And so sometimes you might not be happy, but you can still be joyful. That's what the Bible now says, the happiness of God is your strength. It says the joy of the Lord is your strength. John chapter 15 verse 11. John 15, you can, if you don't have your Bibles, or just listen to me. It says, these things have I spoken unto you, that my joy might remain in you. Listen. Jesus says, I've spoken these things to you. What has to remain in you? My joy. My joy. That my joy might remain in you and that your joy might be full. Now, how does your joy and my joy get full if you don't have the joy of God? That's important. So if you're looking at giving away your joy to others, you need to have that joy. And where does that joy come from? Not from what you do. You know, Sunita was talking about me and Blessing passed the exams. That's happiness, that's excitement. Right? What if they didn't pass their exams? Will they still be happy? No. They'll be sad. And you're supposed to be sad. You can't feel and say, hey! You're mentally retarded if you do that. You know, you can't do that. You should be sad. But the joy in you necessarily is not going to affect it because of you failing your exams. So it's important that God's joy remains in us. It says here that the joy in you and that your joy might be full. This is my command, that you love one another as I have loved you. Greater love hath no man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends. In Psalm chapter 16 verse 11, it says, you make known to me the path of life. In your presence there is fullness of joy. Not fullness of happiness, not fullness of excitement. It's the fullness of joy. And so ask yourself, do I want happiness or do I want joy? Now let me tell you something in this. With joy, you can make yourself happy. But with happiness, you can't get joy. I repeat this. When you have joy, you can find happiness in that joy and through that joy. But if you don't have joy and waiting for happiness and running your life on happiness or the things that are happening that are good, and by the way, happiness only comes when good things happen. When bad things happen, sadness comes. So the question here is, how many times in the day is your life going to be good? And how many times in the day are you going to be happy? For all we know and have experienced, there's more sadness coming every day in our life than happiness. Be it people, circumstances, situations, things happening. There's more sadness. There's no happiness. So maybe in a week twice you might be happy, but you'll be like 100 times sad. So the question is, do you want happiness or do you want joy? And that's what Psalm says. You make known to me the path of life. In your presence there is fullness of joy. At your right hand are pleasures forevermore. These pleasures forevermore can only come with the joy of the Lord being your strength. Nothing else. Galatians 5:22 and 23. Galatians 5:22 and 23. It says, but the fruit of the Spirit is love, and second is joy. The second fruit of the Spirit is joy. How important it is to understand joy. James chapter 1, 2 and 3. James 1, 2 and 3 says, count it all joy. Never says count it all happiness. It says, count it all joy, my brothers, when you meet trials of various kinds. Simon was talking about all the difficulties in his life. He was talking about for 6 months how he was broken and shattered and pressed and shaken and thrown and devastated. It says here, count it all joy, my brothers, when you meet trials of various kinds. So when you're going through the most difficult moments of your life, what are you supposed to count it? You're supposed to count it as joy. Now listen, God's not a dumb guy. He's a pretty smart guy. He never says, when you're going through a hard time, pretend to be happy. He's saying it's okay for you to be sad. God is absolutely okay with sadness. There's nothing wrong with sadness. Sadness is not a sin. Sadness is an emotional outbreak of the fruit of what happens to you. There's nothing wrong with that. But joy is a permanent condition. Happiness is a temporary feeling. I hope you're understanding. Happiness is a temporary feeling. Joy is a permanent condition. Now, if I want to translate this in medical terms, fever is a temporary situation in your life. But if you have something like diabetes, that's a permanent condition. Fever will come and go. You don't have permanently fever all the days of your life. It's an external condition that happens when something happens, the weather but if you take some disease like diabetes, that's permanent. And so happiness is temporary. Joy is permanent. So it's important that we focus on the joy. It says, count it all joy, my brothers, in James 1, 2 and 3, when you meet trials of various kinds, for you know that the testing of your faith produces steadfastness. Why should we consider it pure joy when we're going through trials? Because the testing of your faith produces steadfastness. Did you realize that most of the mistakes that we make in our life is because we're not steadfast? We keep wavering around, we keep shaking around, we're not sure of things, we're reluctant of things, we're not so confident of things. That's because we are not steadfast. How do we become steadfast? It's very clear. It says, for you know that the testing of your faith produces this steadfastness. And before that testing of your faith, it says, count it joy. Count it joy. Make sure you're functioning with joy for all the trials of your life. John chapter 16, verse 22. John 16, 24, I'm sorry. John 16, 24 says, until now, you have asked nothing in my name. Ask and you will receive, that your joy may be full. Wow. It says, until now, you have not asked anything. It says, ask and you will receive. Excuse me. Ask and that your joy may be full. Now, when we ask God for things, make our requests known to God. Sometimes God does something. Sometimes He doesn't do something. Sometimes He gives something. Sometimes He doesn't give something. Right or wrong? Every time you ask God in prayer, did it come to you? I've asked 1,000 things. I got only 99. So do I get angry with God because 1,000 didn't come? No. You can ask. Keep on asking. Children ask their parents for 1,000 things every month. Is it necessary the parents have to give it? They can, but they don't have to. Right? So it says here, until now you have asked nothing in my name. Ask and you will receive, that your joy may be full. So God's saying, listen, you can ask for anything. Keep on asking. You'll receive. But let's say you don't receive. Let's say I never gave you what you wanted in your prayer. He's got a solution for that. He's saying, ask and you will receive, that your joy may be full. He says, even if you don't receive, make sure your joy is full. If you don't get your request answered, at least make sure that the joy of who I am to you is complete. And you see, the whole point is, even when you ask God for something, make sure that you have a joyful heart and you ask. Don't ask God for things in anger, arrogance, and frustration. Never do that. How many of you will go to your family members or your friends or your mom and dad and say, hey, you want to give that money to me or not? Now. You want? Really? Do you get money from your parents and gifts from your parents like that? I think some do. I've seen some like that. It's a very rare case. Let's not bother about those cases. They're weirdos. But the normal ones, the real normal ones, won't behave like that. You show respect. You show honor. You have some gratitude. And it's not a demand. It can never be a demand. It can never be a demand. I've heard some children saying, you're my parents. No. As if I asked you to be born. Really? Have you heard? I've heard some children. I never asked you to be born. You only brought me. Wow. So because you brought me, do this now. Wow. Sometimes we behave with God like that. It's a one thing behaving with your parents like that, which by the way is not acceptable and you'll be in trouble. And it's another thing to do that with God. You're God. You better give this. Only you can give it. Of course, only He can give it, but does He have to give it? No. But make sure that your joy is complete when you talk to God. Make sure your joy is complete when you talk to people. It's important that you demonstrate joy. Nehemiah 8 verse 10. I want to end with this. Nehemiah 8:10. It says, the joy of the Lord is your strength. Nehemiah 8:10. The joy of the Lord is your strength. I think at any given point of time, anybody will cry and say, strength is enough for me to manage my life. I've never heard anybody say, money is enough for me to manage all problems. Bodyguard is enough for me to take care of my life. Those are dangerous prayers to pray, and they're very stupid prayers to pray. Never do that. That's the worst prayer you can ever pray. God, give me all the money to solve my problems. You know what God will do, or might do, not will do. You know what God might do? He'll give you all the money, and along with all the money, all the sicknesses. How's that for an offer? Would you like all the money to take care of all your sicknesses and your problems? So what's the big point of money? Because half the time you're in the hospital and in the doctor. It's not a nice way to use your money. So you don't ask God for all the money to take care of all your problems. You ask God, I want joy. Lord, I want your joy. That joy will become my strength. That strength is enough for me to take care of all my challenges and circumstances. I don't need influence. I don't need money. I don't need politicians. I don't need family. I don't need great friends. I don't need nothing. Not even a great education or not even a great job. I don't even need that. All I need is your joy, which produces strength, which will help me to live my life. So change your prayers. I'm encouraging you to change your prayers. Don't pray prayers of children in kindergarten. You know what children in kindergarten pray? Have you heard a kid from kindergarten praying? Have you ever heard any child asking for something or praying something? God, I want chocolate. It's not a bad prayer, but the chocolate is going to be done in 5 minutes and it's going to go inside and come out another place. It's gone. You don't want that. That's not your prayer. Right? Don't pray prayers of kindergarten kids. Pray some seriously matured prayers. What did King Solomon ask God? Strength. Wisdom and knowledge. God asked him, what do you want? Just say it, I will give it. Nothing came to his mind. Nothing. Just as God, give me wisdom and knowledge. Just wisdom and knowledge. And the guy with wisdom and knowledge made all the money in the world, made all the friends in the world, had all the smartness in the world, just with wisdom and knowledge. Nothing else he asked for. Just like how he asked for wisdom and knowledge. Ask God for joy. With joy comes strength, and with strength comes capacity to handle anything. Because remember, that strength is not a physical strength, it's not an emotional strength, it's a godly strength, because that came from joy. The joy of the Lord is your strength. So when God's joy produces strength, imagine what kind of a strength that would be. You know, there's only one person in the Bible that had great strength. Who's the guy? Samson. Samson had great strength. Where do you think that strength came from? It's God. God's joy in Samson's life produced that strength. Not an ordinary strength. It's an amazing strength. Right? So, let anything happen in your life. Doesn't matter. I'm telling you once again, let anything happen in your life. It doesn't matter. What matters is that you be joyful. Do you know half of the people get discouraged and get depressed? You know why? Definitely because they're not happy, but even more because they're not joyful. You can get into serious trouble and even go to the point of losing your life if you're not filled with God's joy. Half the people committing suicide take these measures in haste and in anger and frustration. Day before yesterday, I was reading an article in the newspaper. An educated lady, she's the founder and the CEO of an AI company, took her son to Goa, killed 4-year-old son, killed him in the room, put his body into a suitcase, and was driving back to Bangalore. Only child, no brothers and sisters, 4-year-old baby boy. She got so frustrated. You know why? Because she was going through a divorce with her husband, and the court was asking her every week to take the son and go to the father for visits. Just because she had to take the son to go and show him to the father to visit his father, she was getting angry and irritated, and her ego tripped in. She says, I couldn't tolerate this anymore. This is my son. Why should I take him to the father? Her husband, not some other man. And so she didn't know what to do. She wanted to teach the husband a lesson that not you, not me. Nobody's going to have this kid. Killed that poor 4-year-old boy. And now she's telling the cops, I never intended to kill him. I didn't know what that meant. Wish I could speak to her. You see what I'm saying? How does all this happen? A mother killing her own child? Is it possible? That's because there's no joy inside. That's frustration. So she was basing her life on the happiness. And she was not happy because the court was telling her, you're supposed to take the child for father's visits. You see, she was basing her life on happiness. When happiness never came, she killed her son. You hear what I'm saying? This is one story. I can tell another 100. Another 100. That's because people are not having the joy of God in their life. They're basing everything on the happiness and circumstances outside. That's not going to work. It's not going to work. So, let's get our lives right. We don't need jobs and salaries and houses and jewelry and possessions and positions. We don't need that. I'm not saying that's not required. It is required. I'm saying that's not our need. Our need is the joy of God. Our need is the joy of God. That's our need. Focus on that. Ask God for wisdom, knowledge, discernment, joy. With that, you can get happiness, you can get satisfaction, you can get fulfillment. All of those things will be only a fruit of joy. Remember the second fruit? And the fruit of the Spirit is love. The result of fruits is the other things. But if you don't have the fruit, then you can't eat it. You have to have the fruit to eat it. You can't look at a mango on a tree and say, so nice. You have to take the mango, have it with you, cut it to eat it. You can't look at it on the tree and say how tasty that is. For many of us in our lives, fruits are hanging, the fruits of the Spirit are hanging in the air. We're not even holding it. And we're saying how tasty is that. No, it's not tasty. You're only seeing it. You're not experiencing it. So if you're not experiencing the fruits of God in your life, you are going to end up in disaster. And the worst will be losing your life, or the even more worst will be losing somebody else's life through you. Either you will kill yourself, or you'll go and kill somebody else who's frustrating you because you're not happy. Who cares whether you're happy? Who cares whether I'm happy? I'm not bothered if I'm not happy. I realized I don't want to be happy. No, sorry, I want to be happy. I realized I don't require to be happy. I want to be happy. But I realized I'm not going to live my life on happiness, but I will definitely live my life on joy. And nobody can take away my joy. Do you know something? Let me end with this. Anybody can take away your happiness. Anybody. You don't have control of your happiness. I have control of all your happiness. Do you know that? Do you know that I control all of your happiness? Whether you like it or not. You can say no, and I'll prove it to you. I'll prove it to you soon after we finish service, that I control your happiness. I can just make your life frustrated in 10 seconds. You won't come back next week to church. I control your happiness, and you control mine. But there's one thing I can't control, is your joy. I have no control over your joy, because that comes from God. That's God's control. If He gives it, I can't come and take your joy, because your joy is in your heart, unless I open up your heart. But I can take your happiness because it's in your brain. It's in your mind. I can just come and say, you idiot. And it's over. All your happiness is gone. You'll just finish worship, go down the steps, I'll say, you monkey. It's over. You'll go back home thinking, how dare this pastor call me a monkey? If anybody else calls me, it's fine. How does he call me a monkey? Your whole week is ruined. And it's in my control. I just control it. But if I came and called you a donkey or a monkey or a fool, and if you looked at me and said, that's not good what you're saying, but God's joy just overruled that, and I'll be a fool. I'll be the monkey, not you. If someone comes and aggravates you and irritates you with anything, just tell them one thing. God's joy in me has just overruled your statement, so nice try. So whatever they called you will get reversed back to them. Or whatever they said to you will just get reversed back to them, because you took the joy of God and threw it over that which you thought is going to be your happiness. And it's over. So don't respond and retaliate with someone's frustration. Take the joy and distribute it everywhere. Okay? But please don't be trying this just because you want to see people's reactions. Don't say, I want to practice on you, I'll just irritate you, you just use your joy. Don't do that. That's not good. But when it happens, use it. You'll be blessed. Let's all stand.